You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
And we are back for the top 8 of the second ever Eye of Winter Classic, hence Eye of Winter Classic 2. Hey, this happens every year, at least that's our hope. So 8 players remain after our initial field, and here to help me break down who's still here is LocoPojo. Let's see what's in the top 8, Pojo.
Yeah, we got an exciting set of players. We have Visarius at 7-0 on Felm Control, Goblin Gravy with his Mono Fire midrange at 6-1, Pateau at 6-1 with Praxis midrange, as well as Tomathor with Praxis midrange at 6-1. There's one more Praxis midrange list on Matt117 at a 5-2, and then beyond that we have the 3 other 5-2s, a JPS control deck for Stixo, Fire Justice Shadow Removal Pile for Sleffer, and 4F Echo Mokto has slipped into the top 8 on Rythagar. And I'm pretty delighted to see a decent amount of different types of value decks. It looks like 7 out of the 8 decks have some degree of justice in them, but for the most part, to some degree of 6 out of 8 have fire in them at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots and lots of big mid-rangey piles, as well as some really interesting combo type decks with Mokto and a good aggro style with the Mono Fire deck.
Yeah, Eye of Winter Classic's a more lighthearted tournament, even if there is some, prize money on the lines. We encourage players to have a lot of fun with this one, and it's certainly delivered with, 4-faction Echo Revenge kind of combo sneaking in here in the top 8, and that's going to be the matchup we break down. Rythagar gets Visarius as his matchup, and Felon Control is a rough matchup for this Echo Revenge deck, but what do you think it'll take for him to have a shot here?
It's gonna take Visarius not drawing Rain of Frogs out of his sideboard lists. So Rythagar's gonna want to win the first round for sure. And if he can do that, then pretty much all he needs is to sort of just get the combo off quickly in the second or third match to push the game to the win. I think that's pretty much all there is to it. His deck doesn't do a lot other than play Mokto combos or Stonepowder Alchemist combos. But if you do get like a very solid Piercing Grief setup and you don't get Rain of Frogs out, then that's a pretty reasonable way to push across enough damage to win the game.
Yeah, and notably, this deck's not even that focused on the Moktos. Only 3 in the main deck, more leaning on the slightly faster Alchemists and Piercing Grief. So once you have a pile of them, it doesn't really matter. So for those not familiar with what exactly this deck's trying to do, the only units it plays are Revenge units and then Elysian Pathfinder to give those Revenge units Echo, kind of like the early versions of Crown that were trying to give Echo units Revenge. This is doing it the other way around, starting with Revenge units and deliberately giving them Echo via Elysian Pathfinder. And while Visarius has something like Steward of the Past to try and shut down Revenge, the issue is you've got to have the Steward in play when those Revenge units die to actually shut them down. So there's some real tension there with figuring out the timing of that, because if you get it wrong, Rythagar has 4 Banish, 4 Slay, a couple of Varus choices, Harsh Rule. So Visarius has to kind of hold these stewards, then play them and pair them with the removal to hit the right things. And while also trying to apply pressure, because Rythagar could certainly have the inevitability here. So that's where the tension in this matchup is going to come from, and it'll be a real fun dance to watch play out.
I've been playing versions of this deck with actual crowns in them for like the last week on stream. While the Mokto does provide a level of essentially infinite just potential, you can generally just fill the board with Moktos in the late game. I think the Piercing Griefs and Stonepowder Alchemists often provide the better win condition for this deck, and so it makes a lot of sense to focus on them, because if you can give those Echo, they will just push enough damage based on their continual ability to sacrifice and replay themselves, and it can be really devastating with a couple of Dark Returns.
Yeah, and it looks like this match is underway. We're just playing out power seats as far as the eye can see and find the ways the draw there for Rythagar. So he'll just be setting up all of his factions and influences. I haven't actually played the full-on 4-faction version of this deck, and I just played the 3-faction version earlier. But the addition of fire is essentially just for rise to the challenge, so that once you give a revenge unit echo, you find it immediately. That is the idea there, and apparently that extra little bit of inconsistency is worth it for once you set up the combo, as it's worked out well for Rithgar here.
Absolutely. It makes all the difference in the world. Not only does it allow you to pick the revenge unit up immediately, but it also gives it that extra bit of damage, which on a piercing grief can turn into essentially just 8 damage on the field the turn that you play Rise. So pretty devastating. Rithgar discarding, or Visarius discarding Rithagar's Harsh Rule. Rithgar has access to 2 banishes, so he's feeling pretty good about any Steward of the Past that might drop, but Visarius doesn't necessarily need to play his first Steward anytime soon.
Right. All right. So Quarry the draw from Rithgar uses it to grab a reduced cost Mokto, and now he's decides to play undepleted power there, get a little more depleted power in hand. That's fine. He'll be able to cast whatever spells he needs to going forward. And another find the way the draw here after Visarius passes. Maybe not exactly what Rithgar's looking for, but out comes Mokto, letting the cowards know that they need to run. And Visarius will use Wisdom. Visarius has 1 Feeding Time main deck, so this Mokto is relatively safe to trot out.
The deck has great answers to Mokto in general, but like right now, Visarius doesn't have anything perfect. Steward of the Past helps, but obviously he knows that there are 2 banishes for it, so he's not going to play that out and risk losing it, since it's such a crucial card in this matchup. Instead, he basically just gets to take some damage from Mokto, and Mokto is certainly a threat on its own.
Yeah, the other notable thing with Visarius's main deck is 0 Permafrost. So really the only clean answer to Mokto, other than doing a Witch kind of Storm setup where at least it's weakened, is just that 1 Feeding Time. But here we see the Withering Witch come out from Visarius and get that Mokto to be a little bit weaker, and he has both Vera's Favor and Black Sky Harbinger and Steward in hand, so he'll be able to set up a way to deal with this Mokto and make sure it never returns.
In Navara's favor is pretty backbreaking. That kills the Mokto permanently dead, and Rithagar is just not going to be able to do much about it. On the other hand, Rithagar can banish the Steward in response, so there's no actual way to play Steward and then get the Mokto down. Basically, the Steward will get banished, and then Mokto will go into the void.
So Visarius getting slightly punished here, really, for choosing to sabotage the Harsh Rule earlier, because he could have saboed a banish and then a banish, but here we see he just goes with Swindle, knowing that if he goes Steward Vera's Favor, as you said, the banish will come out in response. The Steward will be dead before the Mokto dies. So wisely decides to just start digging for other things, but in the meantime, Visarius is at 10 health, might end up just now as another Steward, could go double Steward, but that doesn't help against double banish.
Yeah, if he picks them out, then that's fine. I think he just needs to get rid of this Mokto to make sure that he doesn't take too much damage. And Rithgar lets it through because he does not have, of course, access to 3 power. Yeah,
Rithgar chose to play a depleted power there and gets punished super hard for it. It's definitely a big mistake there. Had so much power hand, could have easily played this undepleted Fire Sigil or Justice Sigil, and instead lowered the shields, and Visarius found his opening, got a blessing to get the Steward down and take out the Mokto and have it get silenced. So gotta play tight in this level of play, essentially, especially against somebody like Visarius who will punish you for it, and we see it happen there.
Rithgar has access to the Echo Stonepatter Alchemist, which is a win con for him, especially with Visarius this low. Visarius, on the other hand, has a Zindil's Gift, which will prevent Rithgar from holding on to banishes against Steward of the Past. So if he gifts first and then plays the Steward and starts going to town on the Stonepatter Alchemists, he's probably in pretty good shape. On the other hand, if Rithgar can top deck an answer to the Steward, or if he can just deal enough damage in a very short period of time, then there's a way that he wins through this.
Well, there's a Vera's Choice off the top, so Rithgar can use that here and almost certainly will. I doubt he'll bounce the Withering Witch with it. So I think we'll see, Vera's Choice goes to Visarius' hand, and Steward gets snapped off. He's okay with Visarius having that Black Sky Harbinger.
He should be banishing here, right? He needs that extra 2 damage.
You can't banish Withering Witch as it costs 5.
It's a 1/1. You'd think it costs less, but no, it is in fact a Withering Witch. So we have the 2/2/2s. Visarius sitting on some Vara's Favors and Black Sky Harbingers to keep himself healthy, but at this point, Rithigar is actually more interested in getting those cards into his deck than anything else. If he draws through the Stone Powder Alchemist, that's a really good way for him to pick up the win.
Yeah, there's kind of a funny idea there that instead of actually using Vara's Favor to kill one of these alchemists, he should have just played Black Sky Harbinger and forced Rithgar to swing in with these alchemists to kill them, because now we see one of them came back immediately, and Visarius is now down to 5.
Yeah, that's an extremely lucky draw. Rithigar is now... that Alchemist can be 11 deep, or it can be 9 deep, depending on which order the Alchemists came in. But each one that he draws deals 4 damage to Visarius, and that means that he's going to be pushing a pretty sizable amount of life. At the moment, Visarius not looking that great. I'm kind of surprised he attacks here. The Harsh Roll seems solid enough. He could Harsh Roll to stop the Black Sky Harbinger, or he could just stay put. I think...
Yeah. Wow, he chooses it.
Seems fine, yeah.
Yeah, he goes down to 4, so now he's going to have to swing again with Harbinger to make sure that if Rithgar draws an Alchemist, he doesn't die. He does have double Death Strike, maybe trying to hold on to those for whatever this other Echo card that gets primed, but finds another Black Sky Harbinger, and that's huge. Now,
very big answer, yeah. The Slay, good pickup for Rithigar. Rithigar is always playing off of his Zindil's Gift, but it's the strength of his deck and not the strength of the hand that matters at this point. With all of the Echo options he gets, Piercing Grief, Stone Powder Alchemist, anything that he draws can be very, very scary at this point.
Yep, so it's really just a race to see who can top deck what, as Echo Legion Pathfinder means basically everything Rithigar draws from here on out is going to have Echo, as we see a Lightning Strike come out on a Stone Powder Alchemist, which means Rithgar's got a Destiny Echo Revenge unit in the Void if he ever does find another Dark Return. And really, this is a race to see if Visarius can find something like a Vera and get a Steward back into play and then start looping and try and get to a spot where he can win this race. As right now he's stable, but very, very low, and we know those Echo, Destiny, Stone Powder Alchemists and things are lurking somewhere near the top of Rithigar's deck.
All the potential Echo Destinies, like those are cards that draw Rithigar additional threats, and in addition draw him answers. If he hits a Stone Powder Alchemist at this point, like it's somewhere in the next 4 or 5 cards of his deck, and it's pretty crucial that it doesn't happen here.
Oh man, Visarius finds the Steward, but Rithgar finds Rise to the challenge. We can get those Destiny Stone Powder Alchemists, take Visarius down to 3, but that's not going to be enough for lethal.
Yeah, he gets to draw 2 off of the Rise, though. So if he decides to pick the Stone Powder Alchemists up, that is enough damage to really make a difference. Visarius is going to be able to Death Strike 1 card away. So
no, he's at 3 open power because he played Steward.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
So if Rithgar gets those 2 Destiny Stone Powder Alchemists and finds removal, he wins here. So that's what Rithgar's hoping to do. As we see the Stone Powder Alchemists come down, he'll get 2 more draw steps off of these, and if he hits removal, another Rise.
Rise doesn't get a whole heck of a lot. He can go for Piercing Grief here. That's probably enough to kill, but it depends on if we got Black Sky Harbinger here. Yeah, this is...
Yeah, Piercing Grief will do it, because Black Sky Harbinger will block... he gets Mokto, but he can't cast them.
Piercing Grief was lethal, but there was the chance that an Annihilate or something would prevent that lethal, and Rithigar is not too keen to attack into a Steward of the Past.
Now he just rose for Moktos that he can't cast and is going to discard them. At least if you get Piercing Grief, you're doing something with it. Like you said, if they have an Annihilate, you don't get lethal, but if they don't have Annihilate, you win. Visarius blocks would go to 6. Piercing Grief, or no, you'd only get through for 5.
I think Rithigar did just sort of throw away that Rise to the Challenge.
It wouldn't have been lethal. But yeah, I mean, you were throwing away the Rise to the Challenge either way, but now you also pulled your Mokto out of your deck.
Okay, hitting that banish is very, very good for Rithgar. That means the steward's gone, and at this point he's pretty happy to lose access to some other things. Death Strike there kills another Stone Petter Alchemist. There's only one Destiny Echo card left, and it's not likely to go into the void anytime soon. So Visaria's still technically stable.
Yeah, he's holding on. Now we see the A space.
This is going to go okay for him. He'll deal enough damage to put his opponent at 1, but Black Sky Harbinger's still around, and that card does block.
And there's Vera.
Steward back. That's gonna stabilize. Rithgar needs to draw essentially a Stone Petter Alchemist at this point. Harsh Rule does the trick.
Yeah.
He didn't get Steward back, so the Stone Petter Alchemist is going to go into his void. That means that Dark Return is an available option. So, yeah. Darius chose to stabilize on life as opposed to stabilize on the Steward, and that means that the Harsh Rule is enough to make it pretty tricky here.
Corey the draw for Rithgar gets a rise. I think he's got one other Echo card to get still from like all of the other Echo Pathfinders he played. We saw the Mocto, but I think there's one or two more. If he can get Echo Piercing Grief, that is lethal. Oh no, it's not through a Death Strike. So Visarius goes to 2
Echo Revenge units. Yeah. So we see a Death Strike there. Visarius does not have access to the second one, so he takes 5. From here, he's got to find enough blockers to deal with the Piercing Griefs. This is a pretty nuts game. Rithgar's still pretty heavily in the lead, but Visarius is doing his best to shut him down.
Yeah, he can draw the right stuff here. Plays out a Witch just to get one blocker down, but again, if a Piercing Grief shows up, 2 of them are coming out. Maybe he's got some removal in hand, but there's the Vera, and that might be enough to get this turned around for Visarius.
Second Vera, he's probably going to go for the Black Sky Harbinger to try and stabilize on health again. Steward is still a great card for him, but it's just not enough. Slay doesn't do it for Rithgar. Rithgar still needs to actually get the damage across. He can hit Vara, but there's not really, there's no reason not to hit Vara or the Black Sky, because at this point, he just needs to make sure that he's stable enough to win.
Yep, he's just hoping that Visarius whiffs on his shadow units either way. Pathfinder, not exactly what you're looking for. Visarius just keeping back those units to try and stave off a Piercing Grief assault. Visarius finds Wisdom. If he finds any shadow unit, I think this is going to be game. And there it is. Withering Witch comes down. 2 Vera triggers in the canister here.
Harbinger hits twice. That puts him at 5. Steward of the Past triggers as well, so that's the silence. The Piercing Grief no longer solves all of Rithgar's problems, although Rithgar can still maybe slay himself a little bit of a path out.
Yeah, and this all kind of goes back to that just misplay with the rises and stuff. But Quarry
here fast spell response. So Quarry into a Piercing Grief hitting 2 removal spells, that would be enough. At this point, not a lot though.
Yep. The draw off that Quarry is Banish. Visarius took some risks there swinging with what he did, but he does need to finish this game at some point. And here we go. 2 Veras crashing in. Will anything else come in? Visarius still sitting at 5. Any Piercing Grief that gets through would be lethal, as he's just drawn some Lightning Storms here. Looks like Black Sky Harbinger coming in to bring that life total up to 8 and make this really hard for Rithgar to get through.
Alchemist with Echo, that's enough life gain to get started on things, but I believe Lightning Storm still kills him here, so...
Yep.
Storm enables the attack, so Visarius is going to pick up this game, and that's really bad for Rithgar because the sideboards do not look better for him.
Well, this was game 1, so we're not sideboarding just yet. This is a best of 5, so we're going to go to game 2. No sideboarding yet. Those rains of frogs and things like that, and extra sabos or whatever, and permafrost, they're not coming in just yet. Visarius has to play this matchup again, but he's got to be happy to pull the win there because that win was in Rithgar's grasp. Just didn't quite find the right lines to close it out.
Yeah, no, pretty rough. He was very, very close. He was within 1 health of that victory, but the film deck just had the right tools to shut it down, and that ended up being enough.
Yeah, I'm sure Rithgar might go back and study the tape and kick himself, but this is why we play these tournaments. This game's not easy. There's always things to learn, always things to build off of. But this match ain't over. We're going to go into game 2 here and see if Rithgar can climb back into it.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so.
I'm also going to mispronounce his name in 7 different fashions in this match. It's going to be a real masterclass.
Should be exciting. We will see exactly what ends up happening.
All right, so here we are, players debating mulligans. It would be a very easy mulligan for Rithgar here, just 1 sigil in hand, so that one's going to get shipped off. Visarius, in the meantime, looking at a hand with 3 power, a gift, a swindle, a withering witch, a sabo. Not exactly the most exciting hand. That's a word.
I mean, he does have the Azindel's gift, and that's a card that's going to be very, very important for him. Hitting it on Rithgar previously really did help shut down the deck's shenanigans. It didn't end up being as meaningful as he wanted it to be, but it was still important for basically preventing the banishes from being in hand and allowing him to play those stewards and keep them on the board as often as possible. So pretty ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we just need to give these players the go ahead. They're just sitting there. So we'll get that going in just a minute. Yeah, so game 2, Rithgar's down. There we go. Hands getting shipped off, and all right, handful of revenge units, just none of the things to really make them insane, but a nice smattering of influence as well, just lacking double justice, it looks like.
We have Piercing Griefs here, Dark Returns, and Moktos. And the Piercing Griefs are a really good start for the deck. You don't want to be able to push that early damage and get yourself some setup for a potential revenge play.
Mm-hmm. And interestingly, Visarius did keep that hand, so he likes the value of sabotage here in terms of disrupting things, and or maybe it already mulligan and I missed it. But yeah, these Piercing Griefs coming out, getting in some early chip damage, doing their best impression of a Water of Life that hits you in the face, and we'll see when they return.
Rithgar has all of his influence fixed, which is a really good start. Sabo on Dark Return means that he's not going to get any draws off of Dark Return, but shouldn't be too meaningful just yet. It matters more if he loses the Elysian Pathfinder. Piercing Grief drawing a card, playing another Piercing Grief, so he's got some early push. That's a pretty good start.
Yep, grief on grief on grief. And in comes this Piercing Grief. Looks like he'll be opting to follow it up with a Mokto rather than playing the Piercing Grief. That was the draw for turn. Again, Visarius doesn't have a lot of clean answers to Mokto in his deck. No Purple Frost main deck, 1 feeding time. So you're really talking about, as we saw in that first game, you've got to kind of awkwardly try and set up a Steward of the Past to permanently answer Mokto. Wisdom of the Elders came out from Visarius. The draw looks like Deathstrike and Champion of Cunning, and looks like he's opting to just hold up Deathstrike here just to try and stop the assault from Mokto.
Killing the Mokto is pretty important here. You just want it out of the way for a little bit while you start getting set up. He's not too worried about it getting Echo because he does have the ability to shut that kind of thing down. So Mokto in the deck is not that big a deal. It just costs him a card of removal later in the game. And if you're playing Azindel's Gift, then you're probably okay with that.
Yep, Visarius is just trying to stabilize, get the gift down, shut down whatever removal Rithgar's holding in hand, and clear the way for Steward like we saw last time. Here, Rithgar just draws another harsh rule for turn, so Visarius just keep on drawing cards using Wisdom instead of Swindle there, and I think we'll see a gift here on an empty board.
Visarius very happy with that gift. No harsh rule means that he can play Vara to his heart's content. He's almost got access to an empowered Champion of Cunning, and when that happens, he's going to be able to just sit on that Aegis and feel pretty happy about it. He can play Vara to protect the Aegis. He's got Steward of the Past to prevent revenges. Yeah, I think he's pretty comfy at this point. He might even just play the Steward of the Past right now.
Yeah, Steward lets him hold up the Deathstrike as well, so if, say, a Destiny Mokto shows up here, you can just cleanly get rid of it while your Steward's on board, but instead the draw for Rithgar is just more power, so both players on about even amounts of power. It's just Visarius got there by getting 2-for-1s with Wisdom of the Elders, so Here we go, a revenge grief, but nothing to it.
Yeah, this is the worst situation for Piercing Grief. It's essentially a blank gain 3, and as soon as it dies, it goes straight back into the void. So even with the extra card that it drew, it's not really providing Rithgar with any additional advantage here.
Yep, and now the units come in to start chipping away at that life total that Rithgar built up. Swindle gets sparked for 3 more cards, and we're seeing 8 cards in one hand versus none in the other. And Visarius has advantage on board. This is where Felm loves to be. Here we go. It's a Destiny parade, but again, Visarius gets to hold up Death Strike here, not too scared of what's going on Rithgar's side of the board.
Yeah, he can Death Strike the Piercing Grief if he wants to not take any damage, or he can just get Mokto out of the way.
Yeah. Interestingly there, Visarius had the opening to use Death Strike while Quarry was on the stack, so you don't have to worry about, say, it finding a banish, but opted to hold on to the Death Strike still. Wait to see what Rithgar does. Rithgar gets a rise to the challenge and finds a Pathfinder.
Yeah, I like this Pathfinder play. Visarius has the Lightning Strike for Piercing Grief, which means that there is another Silence on the board, and Pathfinder will trade with Steward, but unlikely to be the actual answer that he needs at this point.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, he's sort of sitting on block a Mokto, block a Steward.
We're going to see a Witch come down here. This is going to be Storm Witch, if I had to guess, or Witch Storm, or Witch Harbinger, something. Yeah, whatever. Visarius actually, some would say that's the incorrect order, but now you actually put Witch in your void for Vera. So now you can set up Vera with Harbinger later to have that Witch ready to go.
Makes a lot of sense here. Rithgar's got Quarry, so he can pick out a couple of cards. He does not find the card he's looking for, but the Steward of the Past helps him, since he's going to be able to get some actual Echo stuff going on. The main problem is that he just doesn't have an answer for Champion, and this card is getting so big that it's not really going to matter what he pulls with Echo. And with Avara bringing back Steward, that's going to be the game for Rithgar. And very likely the set, because now we get sideboards, and it gets a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, when Rain of Frogs comes down, I guess Rithgar might be able to turn those Destiny Frogs into Destiny Frogs with Echo. So it's kind of in line with the strategy, but we'll see. You're never out of it till you finally out of it in a card game. But yeah, especially in this game, it's over. And being down 2-0 before sideboards as a combo deck, that's not where you want to be.
Wisdom from Visarius. He's got perfectly good lethal right there, and Rithgar's hand is empty thanks to Azindil's gift. So looking pretty solid and shutting it down. Rithgar can try and take it back in the sides.
Yeah, down 2-0 to Felm control before sideboarding. Not where you want to be, but we'll see what Rithgar can figure out. He's got some Varus choices to bring in, scheme to up the consistency, some 4 sabotages of his own to try and take out the Rain of Frogs of the annoying gifts. So there will be some back and forth here as we up the interaction on a different axes, right? The maybe harsh rules come out or something like that. I realize they're useful for resetting these crazy Vera boards, but is that where you want to be as Rithgar in this matchup?
I think that killing Vera is super important, so it's possible that he's going to be set up there, but those Sabos and Vara's choices definitely need to come in. Not only do the Sabos hit Rain of Frogs and some of the cards that are coming in from Visarius' sideboard and actually give Rithgar a spitting chance of getting his full combo through, but they're also fairly powerful, even if your opponent is trying to hold Sabotage and wait for you to draw a card that he wants to Sabo. So yeah, I think there's some potential fight in Rithgar's deck. It's going to be very dependent on whether or not he draws the appropriate cards at the appropriate time.
Yeah, Rithgar is going to up the disruption. The problem is Visarius is also upping the disruption and doing it in a much more extreme fashion. He can bring in 2 more sabotages to complement the ones he already has, those 3 Rain of Frogs that we've been talking about. Even has access to something like Backlash if he wants to just play Protect the Steward, which is a pretty good game to play in this matchup. He's got so many removal spells that he might want to start taking out, and even has the option of bringing in something like Permafrost if he wants a temporary kind of reprieve from a Mokto that's rampaging through the skies.
Yep, lots and lots of good cards to access. The main thing that Visarius can do here is upset the balance of his deck too much by bringing too many good answers in. If he curve and like cuts out some of the cards that are just winning the game, even if they aren't specifically there to counter Rithigar's deck, then there's a chance that that could go a little bit poorly for him. Like we saw how good Champion of Cunning was in that deck, and how good Swindle was in that deck. Those are all like very valuable cards that he's going to have a hard time cutting for even more answers to Rithigar's strats.
Oh yeah, but he already has other very good options to cut. You could maybe like trim down on the number of storms or lightning strikes. But as this game is underway, we see Rithigar had a hand that had sketchy power, but not so anymore, as Find the Way will help smooth that all out. And now he's just got the opener you want, some Pathfinders, and then those will then you combine that with Rise of the Challenge, you have Dark Return, you've got a Banish to answer a Steward. That's a nice spot to be, while Visarius doesn't have his disruption for it yet.
Rithigar can rise. Visarius sitting on the Azindal's Gift at 7, which is the card that he most wants to play. Rithigar sitting on enough expensive stuff that gift is going to be pretty meaningful if Visarius gets to it in time. And yeah, just drawing power here is going to be fine for Visarius, I think.
Yep, so here we go. Rithigar gets out one of those Pathfinders. We'll maybe see a Rise next turn to find that card with Echo, but Visarius already has a Flying Aegis Champion of Cunning right there on curve, turn 5, assisted by 3 dual faction seats and banners and 2 primal sigils.
Yeah, this is a rough situation for Rithigar. He can rise and find something if he wants to. He's not going to get saboed on the Dark Return, so that's pretty good for him, but he doesn't really have a great answer to Champion, and even if he does, Var is just going to bring it straight back.
Yeah, Rithigar had some interesting options there, opting to go with the second Pathfinder instead of just rising while Visarius' shields are down. I don't know. If that card with Echo was Piercing Grief, I would have really wanted to grab it with Rise on this turn, especially because it could have swung in with Champion. And if it was Mokdo, you would want to play it this turn. So I don't know if getting the second Pathfinder with the second Echo is that important here, but the draw for turn is Scheme. We see it come out and finds a Varus Choice off of it.
Yeah, that's a really good card for him. It gets rid of the Vara. The main problem here is that he is going to have to face down the... and he did not find a Sabotage or a good way to protect his own face. So Gift is going to come in. That's going to be a really sizable amount of cards hit. And at this point, Rithigar can rise, but if he rises, he might not hit what he wants to hit.
Well, you've given 2 cards Echo, so now you're just hoping one of them is a Piercing Grief so you can get that down. The other one will get discarded along with the rest of your hand, but hopefully he'll remember to seek as well, as he hasn't played a power yet this turn. But he'll have 2 Echo cards to pick from, and again, you kind of need one of them to be Piercing Grief. If it's anything else, is going to get discarded.
Comfy picking up a Piercing Grief without Echo at this point. Like, if he just wants to hit his opponent, that's a reasonable way to go about it. He picked Stone Powder Alchemist, so he did pick up one of the Echo cards, but it's not a card that he can play. Instead, he's going to be basically trying to access that through Dark Return, which doesn't make any sense because he has to discard it.
Yeah, so he's going to be hoping to top deck Dark Returns going forward to Dark Return one of these Alchemists, but they'll just have Echo, not Revenge or Destiny or anything like that. I mean, they'll still have Revenge and Echo. So he's just hoping to basically top deck Dark Return here.
I love this play. I feel like with the Stone Powder Alchemist not actually having Destiny, Dark Return doesn't really work that well on it. So he's mostly just taken a card that he would have drawn that would have been very good for him and put it into his Void, where it's more easy to kill with Steward of the Past. Like, I'm worried about this line.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in where all the lines you play are going to feel bad, but when you're at a spot like that, sometimes you have to make those plays and hope that your opponent's not doing anything. It's not about maximizing potential value, it's about trying to maximize your win potential. And now he's just staring down a lethal Champion of Cunning, even though Visarius has literally nothing in hand but a Permafrost.
Yeah, I feel like if Rithigar had picked up a Piercing Grief here, he might have been able to force Visarius into a defensive posture, which would have helped out a little bit against this Champion of Cunning. But as it stands, he loses on board to what's currently happening, so that just knocks him out of the game.
Yeah, not exactly the prettiest draw from Visarius, but it gets the job done there. I think that was a series where Rithigar could have taken a couple of those games with just slightly better lines of play, but that's a deck that's pretty tough to play. So can't exactly just put all the fault there. Still a good showing, making top 8 with 4 faction Echo Revenge is no small feat at all. So congrats to Rithgar. And of course, congrats to Viserius showing off why he's one of the top competitors in the ETS.
Very well played.
So with that, I don't think we're going to hop into any kind of backup matches unless I get word from coverage in a moment. But in the meantime, I'll take this opportunity to plug us, the aReNGee Eternal.
Awesome.
We recently got partnerships, so if you want to make any kind of donations to the cause, this is totally volunteer. We just run this because we love the game. You can subscribe to our channel, but we also have a Patreon page, so you can also donate to the Patreon. You can check that out. The information is hopefully up on screen. I can't check that, but there's all kinds of awesome Patreon stretch goals. We've hit some of them already, such as expanded article content, monthly Sunday tournaments, and special features, kind of like last week's sealed tournament, things like that. And as we go forward, better guaranteed prize pools and other sweet perks like that. So if you love what we're doing here in the Eternal Tournament series and want to show some support, show some love, hey, the Patreon's a great way to do so, and we appreciate any kind of support you can throw our way. And with that, we'll take a short break, and we'll be back for the next round of the top 8. 4 players will remain, and we'll see who has their eye on the Eye of Winter Classic prize.